This has been an extraordinary process. I am absolutely delighted that the Young Archaeologists Club have been made an award in this year. But of course, I was asked to tend my thoughts all the way back to the 1970s and why we did it and what we did. And I have to say that life has changed so much in the last 43 years that it's actually quite difficult to remember whether my memories are actually accurate. I was asked if I would to start by saying something about why we started the club and what the aims were. And to put it into context, I was working in 1970, from 1969 with Philip Barker at Roxeter. And we'd become, therefore, involved with Rescue, the beginning of Rescue, the British Archaeological Trust, which had started at Barford in 1970. And it became clear that it would be fun to do something with younger members of the British public in the interests of getting them more knowledgeable about the threat to British archaeology. But that was not the only reason why I was particularly interested in it myself. Part of it was also the context within which I had been brought up. And that is that I had started archaeology at the age of 11, like a whole coterie of people like Barry Cunliffe and Martin Biddle, John Collis and numerous others, for whom starting as we went to secondary school seemed natural, and we never deviated from wanting to be archaeologists, rather like fakes, as we've just seen. But it was getting much more difficult in the early 70s for school children to get, or school-age children, to get involved in archaeology. People were just beginning to worry about health and safety, about having insurance on excavations, about the fact that excavation wasn't child's play, and so on and so forth. But I had had this opportunity in the West Midlands through the junior field group of the Birmingham Midland Archaeological Society to get involved in archaeology. My first excavations were under the aegis of David Whitehouse, digging Roman road cuttings across the Lickey Hills, and then running my own excavations, age 16, supervised from afar by the august personages like Graham Webster, Philip Barker, Philip Raats, and a number of other people. The West Midlands were unusual in allowing this, but it was something that made me very conscious that if I had not been encouraged at that sort of age to start, I might simply have never gone on. And all I can say is that for a very short time when I was in my mid-teens, I thought men were more interesting than archaeology, and then changed my mind. Now, the club was intended to be Cambridge-based and local, and indeed the first meetings and newsletter were dated July 1972. But articles in the Times of the 4th of September 1972 and the TES of the 1st of September 1972 turned it national overnight, what we would now call viral. This was an early example of viral. So we started a club which was national in its extent. Subscription was 50p, and membership opened for 9 to 16-year-olds. And we set ourselves to produce 4 newsletters a year and to try out a whole range of activities which didn't involve digging, despite this picture of me excavating, I think, with YAC members at Roxeter. That's certainly me, and those are children. Don't remember the circumstances. Norman Hammond, who, by the way, Beatrice, sends special greetings to you, and wrote the piece in the Times, commented that the newsletter wasn't actually entirely didactic, but offered the chance to make a model of Stonehenge out of plaster of Paris, which is what you did in those days. And this could be done at home or by the branches that began to open from 1972 onwards. The early branches were run by individual volunteers who came together from time to time to exchange ideas, and chief among them was Mike Corbishley, then teaching at Colchester Royal Grammar School and a site supervisor at Roxeter, hence the importance of Roxeter as a node through which the Young Archaeologists Club started to operate. We used museums, we used schools, we used youth clubs, we used any place we could find with anybody who was interested in dealing with this, and we didn't have to do checks on their suitability for the purpose. Heaven knows what went on, but nobody ever complained. I ran the club out of my fellows' rooms in my Cambridge college, and used a small group of students, both adult students and undergraduates, to run the Cambridge branch, with monthly meetings and excavations and outings. And I was reminded of that the other day when I actually helped run a meeting in St Andrews Museum for young archaeology in St Andrews. What we were doing, we're finding things that children could do which didn't involve excavation, and as you see here from the Young Rescue workshops in the Horniman, in a museum context, we've got people doing practical work of various sorts. And here at Manchester, grinding corn using an Anglo-Saxon quern in 1975. And there was a lot of experimental archaeology, not just in the branches, but also in schools which became branches as well. John Steen, for instance, experimenting with pyrotechnics at Kettering. One of the things we started to do when we felt a bit braver, and it's about 3 years in, I think, to the club, we started our national holidays, and we took young rescue members away on holiday for a week at a time. The first was at Oxenholme in Wiltshire, and later we took them, I certainly took them to Derbyshire, to Scotland, and to Wales. And thank goodness for Mike and his experience of running boys through Colchester Royal Grammar School. From him, I learned how to handle my first night superintending the boys' dorm. I learned more about junior male behaviour during one evening than I have ever had experienced before. 2 of my college kitchen staff volunteered to help prepare meals. And again, we learned quite a lot about mass catering and the value of turning your pastry bright yellow using food colouring. The holidays, and Stonehenge is the opposite. So you see Stonehenge as a leitmotif for today. First of all, we learned to make Stonehenge in the first newsletter, and then secondly, almost the first place we took anybody, of course, was Stonehenge when we were based at Oxenwood in Wiltshire. But it wasn't, the holidays were not intended to be entirely for entertainment. They were intended to be broadly educational. And we had access to all periods, and all involved one very long walk. You will not believe that the hills of Wiltshire proved exhausting for kids from Suffolk. But Mike was determined to make members work and walk, and hence every holiday had its scrapbooks, and at the end of every day, the members got down to work to produce material which made up the holiday scrapbooks, which sit in the archive in York. Oh, sorry. Now, my bête noire was the newsletters. Until Mike took them over, thank heavens to Mike, you see how important he is to my theme. Newsletters were typed on Gestetner stencils, if you remember the peculiar smell of Gestetner stencils. And I then, without transport, myself then in Cambridge, took the bus to Ely, to the County Teachers' Centre, and ran off the newsletters and then brought them back, very heavy parcels by bus, and then each envelope was hand-addressed by me and mailed. And the very first issue of Young Rescue, as it was called, is here for those of you who want to go back to the nostalgia of pre-computing, and indeed almost of any sort of professionalism in publishing. They did the trick, but I was terribly grateful to Mike, and as you see, his attempt is very much more professional than mine. Running the club was very labour-intensive, but I could do a mailing of 1,000 over one night, a fact I proved again and again and again as we produced 4 issues a year, and then did it again in the early 1990s. For a while, the York Archaeological Trust took on the Young Archaeologists Club, as it then was. When they ran out of steam and out of money, I ran the club again for a while from Homerton, where I was then principal. I was enormously grateful when the CBA took it on. But it did enable me to understand exactly how easy it is to do this with volunteer labour, and how cheap it can be if you're not costing your own labour, that is. The labour was free, but we got some help from the subscriptions, and we got handouts, and they are important, and I want to commemorate the value of the money put in by Ian Skipper, who was also helping to set up Rescue, and the Robert Kiln Trust, who allowed us to do the bigger things, so that YAC Awards could be in the British Museum, with David Wilson in attendance, with the Duke of Gloucester giving out the prizes, and with Magnus Magnusson also taking a part. In other words, in the early days of the club, we got an enormous amount of help from the people who were powerful of the time. But eventually, the name became a bit of a problem. It wasn't archaeological enough. And we just looked this up, Nikki and I, earlier today. We just remembered that, or found out from the newsletters, that we changed the name to the Young Archaeologists Club in 1980. So that the first issue of the Young Archaeologists magazine was the spring 1981. Why? Well, because I was getting envelopes addressed to Child Rescue, Cambridge, the Young Reminders Club, and the Young Rescuers, which said in the corner, Try Salvation Army. It was clear that, in a sense, the parentage, the name, needed to be changed to something more reliably likely to make people make the allusion between the purposes of the club and the Young Archaeologists, and it made it much easier for the post office. The club was never intended to train future professionals, but I can tell you that Simon Thurley cherishes his membership card, which he still has. Willie Dalrymple, who's the travel writer, argues that we taught him how to look at buildings. And I'm going to finish with a letter from a man called Tim Insall, written to me in 1992 when I'd got the club back again for a bit. He's now, of course, Professor of Islamic Archaeology. Dear Dr. Pretty, I thought you might like to see this postcard, which you sent me when I was 7 years old. Well, I'm glad to say my interest held. I'm now here beginning my PhD under John Alexander on Islam in West Africa. Anyway, I thought you might be interested to see this. If you could possibly return it to me after you've read it, I would be most grateful. Best wishes, Tim Insall. It has been an extraordinary journey, the Young Archaeologists Club. I'm very grateful to the CBA for taking it on. It was a pleasure to have Prince Edward cut the birthday cake when we were 40 years old in Cambridge in 2012, and I am delighted at the recognition it now has in Europe. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed to Kate Pretty for telling us all about the early days of the Young Archaeologists Club. The idea that she, and indeed Mike Corbishley, came up with over 40 years ago continues to provide thousands of young people and hundreds of adult volunteers from right across the UK with incredible archaeological experiences every year. Her hard work and dedication in setting up the Young Archaeologists Club and setting that ethos that archaeology should be for everyone, including young people, continues to inform and drive the club today. It's not an understatement to say that without Kate, YAC would not be where it is now. We would not be here celebrating YAC as a laureate of the EU Prize for Cultural Heritage Europa Nostra Awards. The Council for British Archaeology, as Kate said, took on YAC back in 1993. At that time, there were 7 local clubs and a nationwide subscription magazine. We now have 70 clubs right across the UK. This map will need to be stretched soon because we've got a branch relaunching in Orkney, hopefully within the next couple of months. These branches meet once a month to provide 8 to 16-year-olds with real archaeological experiences. Unfortunately, we couldn't fill the room today with the thousands of young archaeologists, so you're going to have to make do with a few photographs, but here are some of the highlights from our network over the last year. Our members have been on thousands, probably not thousands, but hundreds of practical excavations. Here we've got members from our cross-border Flodden YAC members up on site in Northumberland, and these young archaeologists won a competition to work with some archaeologists in North Cornwall, again showing that range that we've got right across the UK. Our members get involved in other archaeological experiences on site. Here we've got some groups doing some finds handling from Sheffield and from the Isle of Wight. And geophysics too. Here's some of our members from our Pontefract YAC branch undertaking a resistivity survey. Lots of our members, like Kate said, get out and about visiting historic sites. These are some of our members from our Canterbury YAC visiting a First and Second World War shelter, and it was indeed described by one of the members of that club as their best meeting yet. I have hundreds of photos of children exploring bits of castles, of historic houses. A fabulous one that came in this year had a private YAC members only beyond this point sign on a secret door in a castle, which I rather liked. I always think that food's important, and this is a really innovative idea of the Young Archaeologists Club. When you can't get out on site, make one out of cake. So here we've got YAC members from our Brecon Beacons branch enjoying their first birthday cake, which was also a stratigraphic analysis. West Wiltshire YAC out field walking and checking out some of their finds from the field that they were let loose in. And this is our Worcester branch having fun in the woodlands. And this follows on from some training we did with our adult leaders last year, looking at how woodlands have been used throughout human history. Slightly dull photograph, but this is our Mersey D YAC poking around the archives of the Central Library and taking a look at one of their earliest documents. We had this group doing some experimental archaeology, and to carry on Kate's theme of pyrotechnics, here they are using a bonfire kiln to fire their replica pots. One of our other branches actually needs to be renamed, it's still YAC, but instead of the Young Archaeologists Club, the Young Arsonists Club. They are our Newark district branch and definitely deserve a big thumbs up because they enjoy building things basically to burn them. So far, their record stands at 1 Iron Age roundhouse and a Viking longship. Our West Wiltshire YAC's highlight this year was sleeping over in the Roman baths in Bath, and they again had that unprecedented access to bits of the museum that members of the general public don't normally get. This is another thing that one of our branches were involved in. This is our York YAC, and incidentally, I would like to give our paragon of virtue, our Community Archaeologist of the Year, a bit of a thumbs up because he did used to run our York YAC branch as well, which wasn't mentioned in the long list of achievements of Dr. Kenny earlier. The branch has now moved on to some new volunteers, and last year they were involved in building some tactile historic maps for visually impaired visitors to the city. So those are just a few of the highlights from this year. I could have given you literally hundreds more. Our branches do a huge range of things, and they're all fantastic. This past year has also seen another major development for the club. In April 2015, actually coinciding with the announcement of our nomination as a laureate of the EU Prize for Cultural Heritage Europa Nostra Awards, we launched our brand new interactive website at a special event inside the Stones at Stonehenge. We're carrying on the theme. And here are some of our Young Archaeologist members from our Wiltshire branches and the fabulous Phil Harding, and we had a VIP member in the middle there, and she won a competition to be officially the first YAC member to log on to our new website, which looks like this. The new website is testimony to our aim of making the club even more accessible for everyone. All of our content, news, competitions and activities are now freely available across the UK, Europe and indeed the rest of the world without subscription fees. Personally, I've had the pleasure of working for the club for more than 10 years, and in that time I've been involved with many marvellous and frankly mad endeavours, all of which have been immense fun and have helped to highlight the amazing work that YAC does with the assistance of many people. I've rebuilt Stonehenge in half size in a combination of wood, cardboard and wallpaper with the help of dozens of kids and archaeologist and broadcaster Julian Richards. Julian's here this afternoon to show his support for the club. Hello, Julian. I've sat in the driving seat of the Time Team Land Rover. I've been put in the stocks at a medieval castle after trying to break in and being accosted by a team of YAC members. I've made Roman shields, hundreds of fake poos out of Play-Doh, and that's a great way to teach young people about dietary evidence, honest. An Egyptian death mask, Viking brooches, and I've even mummified oranges. I've rowed Phil Harding from Time Team up the River Ouse in York as part of a dragon boat team raising hundreds of pounds for the club. And Phil is also here this afternoon to show his support for YAC. Hello, Phil. And most importantly, I've met and I've been inspired by hundreds of young archaeologists and adult volunteers. Our volunteers really are the real heroes of YAC. Without them, we wouldn't be able to run our 70 local YAC clubs that meet in museums, universities, village halls, schools and other venues right across the UK. Our EU Prize for Cultural Heritage Europa Nostra Award belongs to them. It belongs to them because between them, YAC was able to offer over 8,500 places for young people to do real archaeology over the last year. It belongs to them because across the YAC network, they contributed around 5,500 days of volunteer time over the last year. Our award also belongs to the thousands of YAC members past, present and future. And before we hear the comments of the jury of the EU Prize for Cultural Heritage Europa Nostra Award, I'll leave a final word to one of our ex-YAC members. I first met James Dilley in 2005 on another one of our YAC holidays, this time in Cornwall. He was named Young Archaeologist of the Year in 2007 and has since gone on to study archaeology at Southampton University. James said, "When I was little, I dreamed of studying archaeology at university and making replicas of all the artefacts I saw in museums. After joining the Young Archaeologists Club, I could spread my wings and be supported in all my early archaeology adventures. Today, my replicas are on display at Stonehenge, and I am reading for my PhD at Southampton University. Thank you, YAC." Now, with a little bit of hope, this is the award presentation for
the Young Archaeologists Club, York, the United Kingdom. The Young Archaeologists Club is a community-led programme which since 1972 has been getting youngsters between the ages of 8 and 16 engaged in archaeology. More than 60% have gone on to study archaeology. The jury are impressed with this achievement over many years of successfully playing a simple yet vital role, infusing young people with archaeology and the past. Prize winner in the category Education, Training and Awareness Raising, the Young Archaeologists Club, York, the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Nikki.
All good celebrations come in threes. Europa Nostra UK, the British arm of Europa Nostra, raised a glass to the Young Archaeologists Club, where indeed in Cambridge they were having a meeting, where indeed it was founded, as you heard from Kate, last September. The grandest appreciation was certainly when European Union Commissioner Tibor Navracic and Europa Nostra Executive President Denis de Kerele, in the presence of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Haakon of Norway, presented your prize at the European Union Europa Nostra Award ceremony in the town hall in Oslo, you know, where the Nobel Prizes are awarded. Europa Nostra places great store not only on these national and international celebrations of the best of European heritage, but in local ceremonies with those who have done the work. And that's why I'm here today, to heap a little more praise back, so to speak, at base. Full of admiration, can hardly begin to describe my feelings on what has been achieved and how it has all been managed. Through the most varied of programs, some 600 volunteers, we've had them praised already, most in their 20s and 30s, have at these 70 branches inspired 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 children now to make the best use of their talents by inspiring them to explore archaeology and, as we've heard, realise their potential in fields well beyond archaeology. Many include archaeology in their further studies, and I understand perhaps a third of them go on to work in the sector in one way or another. Perhaps the greatest challenge to Europa Nostra is to involve young people in cultural heritage. Here I'm thinking of your volunteers and your children. And in this, amongst all our prize winners this year, the club has led the way. But I'm preaching to the converted. Indeed, you've heard so many marvellous things about the club already, who know far more about the achievements of the club than I, so I should perhaps rather finish by telling you a little about Europa Nostra, with which you may be less familiar. Over more than 50 years, we've built a network of more than 400 member organisations representing millions of citizens, and of some thousands of individual members across Europe. What do we do? There are perhaps three main strands to our activities. We lobby. We lobby to make cultural heritage a European priority as essential to our identity and quality of life. We promote sustainable development and quality standards in planning in order to safeguard our cities, our countryside, and our historical, architectural, and archaeological sites. We are, in these regards, your main connection with the European Union, the Council of Europe, and UNESCO. We campaign. We campaign for heritage that is at risk from uncontrolled development, neglect, and conflict. Kosovo has been a major concern. But the happiest part is the third strand, celebrating the best of European cultural heritage through our award scheme. We can bring to public attention across the continent the excellence and dedication of some remarkable organisations and individuals. We like to feel a continuing partnership with all our members and prize winners, and want to bring more of you on board. There are some booklets and leaflets about the place. Some of you may have some already. Do take one. Do join us. And that brings me full circle back to this celebration. You've had some of the citation already. I will read some other parts of it. The jury were impressed with the successful achievement over many years of a simple yet vital role to enthuse young people about archaeology in the past. The dedication that goes into the planning of activities and longer-term structure of the organisation is truly noteworthy. The Young Archaeologists Club represents an outstanding achievement in education. Many congratulations from Europa Nostra UK, which likes British entries to do well and is proud of you. So might we now perhaps represent, because you've already had it presented once, represent the award. I think you've chosen they're very heavy, these things. I didn't have one. Pray Kate should come too, surely.